Heather Martinez is one of the most generous people that I have the privilege of knowing. Many of you will remember Heather from when she came from Durango in my first year as program coordinator to give a presentation on markers the year that our theme was pointy tools. But what you may not know, because it is not written down anywhere, is that when the pandemic hit, I was ready to take a break from meetings, being totally unfamiliar with Zoom and not being very interested in it. Then Evelyn Costello called me and told me to get in touch with Heather to see if she would help us go online. So I did, and Heather happily helped us set up our system. She was our first tech host. The PowerPoint that Sharon uses to introduce each meeting is a gift from Heather. When we were capable, she gave up the Escribiente tech host job so that she could help others. But that was not before she had trained many of us to be tech hosts, so that we have a deep team in case Sharon can't host. I would not have thought of Heather for a presenter for our theme of writing fluids, but at some point in a conversation, she mentioned chalk ink, which I had never heard of. She thought it would be difficult to show how to use it on Zoom, but rose to the challenge. And here she is to present chalk ink to us.
For being here and for allowing me to present something that I'm a little bit passionate about, I would say, but I think I'm passionate about a lot of things. So as soon as Elizabeth asked me to present this, I think first I thought, I don't know what I'm going to say about this. And I started going through some old photos, and before I knew it, I came up with the entire presentation in about a day and was very excited to be able to share this with you. And so thank you for having me again. I enjoyed teaching you all sign painter when I came in person right before the pandemic. And I'm just going to jump right in and start talking about lettering with liquid chalk. All right, thank you so much. And I have to say, it is fantastic having a tech host as a presenter. I've never had one before as a presenter, so this is fantastic. All right, so let's talk about lettering with liquid chalk. Now, I say liquid chalk because there are chalk paints out there that are used for different things, but I say liquid chalk because liquid chalk can come in a marker form, or you can brush it on, you can mix your own. And a little bit about me for those of you who may not have heard of me before. My name is Heather Leavitt Martinez. I'm dialing in from southwest Colorado in a small mountain town called Durango. And as Trish was saying before, I'm really excited that you'll post this on your YouTube channel because I am an ambassador for Neuland. And Neuland, the same name as our beautiful Neuland hand by Rudolf Koch, but no relation whatsoever, is a company that creates tools for visual practitioners. These are people who are graphic recorders, visual facilitators, who use large-scale drawings to help facilitate meetings. And I happen to teach lots of facilitators all over the world about lettering. And the chalk line that Neuland has is something that's not quite as used as often as some of their other markers. So I'm excited to be able to share some of those with you today. There's also a long list of other things that I do here. So if you're wondering what is all of that, feel free to either unmute or put that in the chat. So I want to talk about, oh, what is street typing? Excellent. I was wondering if anybody would notice that. So I have a 1969 Olivetti Valentine. It's a red typewriter that I go out into the street several times a year, usually in the fall and spring, and I type. I type poems and prose. People pay me to type love letters to their loved ones. And one of my favorite things to do, I call it Doppler poetry. And what it is I listen as people are walking by. I hear parts of conversations and I type them down, and then they all go into one page, and it's quite strange, but I love it. So yes, I am I am a street typist as well, and I've done that in many cities all over the world. Wherever I can take my typewriter, I go and type on the street. A little geeky, but it's fun. So there's three types of liquid chalk that I know of. And if you can think of any more, before after I explain these to you, then I'd love to hear what those are. The first type is called wet erase, and this is the kind where if you write on a chalkboard or something that's non-porous, you can take a wet cloth and wipe it away. And the brands that create those that I know of and that I've used are Neuland, Chalk Ink, VersaChalk, and Arteza just came out with a whole new line of chalk markers. The second kind is I call semi-permanent, and the only company that I know of that makes it is Chalk Ink, but it's a special line called Artista Pro. And you'll see that that chalkboard there has water on it because what I did was I wrote all of those words on a chalkboard and then I sprayed water on it and it did not come off. But it can come off with Windex that has ammonia D in it. So you have to have that special Windex with ammonia in it. Doesn't smell great, but it will come right off with that. So Artista Pro is the only semi-permanent company or the company that I know that's making that. If you know of others, please let me know. And then the third kind is actual chalk paint, not the type that you spray or the type that you paint that looks like chalk, but this is actually, again, it's chalk paint that's made from Irwin straight line. Now, what that is a construction chalk that they use in snap lines. Or if you think about powdered chalk that they use on football fields can also create chalk paint. And this is really great for more porous items or things like rocks like you see here. All right, so I'm going to talk about each one of these a little bit deeper. So again, wet erase is temporary, and those are the 4 different types there. And I wanted to show you some of the ways that I've played with this. And at the top there where it says transparent, openness, fairness, clarity, direct, honesty, and truth, I thought those were nice words to actually put on a window. So that's on a piece of glass at my house, and it overlooks a mountain. So I thought, oh, beautiful sky today. I'm just going to draw all over this window. I got my new Neuland markers in and I was writing in different lettering styles. And so that transparent lettering style is a style that I call national parks. Truth that's going up the side is, I call that brick, and it's based on Roman hand. And then there's a couple of other lettering styles in there. But I want to call attention to the word transparent and clarity. What color does that look like to you? And feel free to put that in the chat or unmute. It's kind of dark. Yeah, it looks black, doesn't it? That's right. So from the inside, with backlit windows, white will appear black. So that's actually white chalk ink. But from the outside, and I didn't take a picture of it, but from the outside, it showed up white. So when you're writing on windows, if you want it to be seen from the outside, white is great because it actually shows up white, and then the window ends up being a little bit darker because it's usually darker indoors than it is outdoors. And then that lefties rock. Now, I love lefties. For those of you who may not know, I have a whole class for lefties. I love teaching lefties. And anytime I teach at conferences all over the world and they want me to teach something for free, like give a free demo, I always do it for lefties because I think we don't have enough lefty classes. But I also want to show you that board that it's written on is actually a sidewalk chalkboard, and it's called, I believe it's called Chalk to Me, and I designed it for Neuland, and I designed it because they came out with this big, beautiful chalkboard that can't be shipped to the United States, and I was really crushed. And so I told them, while I was at this conference, and you'll see the mural that I did later on their big chalkboard, I drew this up and I ripped it out of my sketchbook, and I said, would you make one of these for those of us who can't get the big chalkboard? And I went to Germany to the factory, and when I walked in, they had that sitting there for me, and they said, we want you to write all over this. And so I did for something else, and then when they came to the United States for a conference, they brought one of these for me. So I'm really excited to have a piece that I designed, that they manufactured, and now they sell in their store. So this is a sidewalk chalk, so you can imagine in US measurements, it's about 2 feet wide by about 3.5 feet tall, or 3 feet tall. So it's an A-frame sidewalk chalkboard. And then that semi-permanent chalk marker, remember they dissolve using ammonia or ammonia D. That's by Arista Pro. I really like using these for sidewalk chalk boards that are going to be outside for big events. So Mancus, one year they had this Christmas event, so I knew it was going to be snowing outside. As you can see, sometimes the winter in Southwest Colorado and probably in Albuquerque too, we don't always get a lot of snow. But so it was beautiful when I made these, and then it snowed all weekend long. So I was so glad that we used this marker. I made 14 chalkboard signs, and that's a lot because it's not just one-sided. It had to be two-sided. So essentially I made 28 signs for this weekend. And then you'll see to the right there that there were some sidewalk chalkboard signs that I made for some of my own events. And this was before Neuland came out with their chalk line, so I was using these sidewalk chalkboards, and I was doing some things with Versa chalk. But I'm pretty sure these are all made. Yeah, these are all made with our Artista Pro by Chalk Ink because I wanted to be able to take them outside, and if they get wet, I wouldn't worry about those letters running. All right, any questions so far about wet erase or semi-permanent?
We have nothing in the chat so far.
Okay, and I'm going to dig deep into when do you use what here in a minute. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this chalk paint that you can make for yourself. And so these are the Irwin straight line marking chalk. Now they are graded in permanency. They also say permanency weatherability. And so if you see in the upper right hand corner where it says breathe in the beauty, I wrote that right after the pandemic started. I would go out into the onto the river walk, and I would take my Irwin liquid chalks after I made them into liquid, and I had one of those. Many of you that work in gardens have them, that one of those little pads that you can kneel on, and I'd walk out there and I would just write, wonderful sayings on the sidewalk. And that breathe in the beauty, it looks a little brown, but it's actually the black. And so so even though it says black, it kind of shows up brown, but that stayed for months. Like it took a really long time for it to wash away. But then the white and the blue, I wrote with that, and that went away after the first rainfall. So there's some different levels of permanency there. If you feel like you want to do something but you want it to go away quickly, then use the white or the blue. If you want something to stick around for a while or don't mind if it sticks around, then the red or the black sticks around the most. And then when we did the whiteboard, we asked, what are some other things that you might have written on? And I said snow because I really wrote with snow. And so I used a brush and the blue Irwin chalk paint, and I slowly wrote the word chill. It was on a really busy sidewalk. This was pre-pandemic. I mean, there's people all everywhere all the time, and I was always afraid because I live right next to the sidewalk. Oh my gosh, someone's gonna fall. So I thought it would be kind of funny, not only to write the word chill on next to a busy sidewalk, but to write chill in snow. All right. So let's talk about surfaces a little bit. I mentioned this before. There's porous, so that would be rocks, slate. If you actually spray chalk paint down, so that's that black chalk paint that you can use regular chalks on, like regular like stick chalk. I don't like using chalk markers on chalk paint because it is really porous and it's hard to get it off. And of course, some chalkboards can be really porous. And then there's non-porous, so that's vinyl. You notice that A-frame that's there, that's actually, even though it's black, it's actually made with a vinyl coating on it. And also Neuland's surface on their chalkboards, it's a really special veneer, but it's also non-porous as well. And then glass. Yeah, so Irwin. I don't know if Irwin is used on the grass football fields. There might be a different kind of chalk. I know that the chalk that they use in football fields come in 5-gallon buckets, and a bottle of Irwin chalk, I think, is around, I don't know, around $7. So if they do sell it to grass like football teams, I'm sure they get a big discount because it can be really expensive even in the smaller bottles. But that's a great question, Evelyn. Yeah, thanks. And so picking the right tool for the job is important. Like I showed you before, having that solution dissolvable or semi-permanent for outdoor is great. But in this picture at the bottom there, where you see all these drawings of buildings, this was the big chalkboard that Neuland brought. And I went to Copenhagen. I was there for a conference and they brought this big chalkboard. Those are actually two pieces that come together and it's curved. And on the other side are whiteboards. And so really fun mural idea. They came to me and they said, do you mind drawing a mural on these two chalkboards? We're going to use it as a backdrop for some of the demos and classes that we're going to be offering this week. And I said, sure. And they gave me the markers and then they walked away. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to draw? So I went through my sketchbook. I was in Copenhagen for a few days before this, and this was a drawing out of my sketchbook. And I thought, well, I've already drawn it once, and I'd never drawn with chalk this large before. I was a little nervous. But before they left, I said, can you at least give me like, I don't know, give me song lyrics or something that you enjoy and maybe as a piece of inspiration. And they said, how about the song Imagine by John Lennon? And so you'll see some of the words from that song are written on this mural as well. So they didn't watch me, they just left. And then when they came in the next morning, this was all done and ready for them to use. And so here I was using two different size chalk markers. There's a small marker that is about 2 to 8 millimeters. And then they have a large flat marker that's about 5 to 15. And I'm going to draw with those here in a few minutes so that you can see what they look like. So this was the part where I got really geeked out, and you have the printouts, the handouts were provided to you, or you can get them in your email. But this is the one page that if you want to take a screenshot of this, I recommend it if for some reason it's too small on your printout, because this is where it gets pretty geeky. And I really took some time to really think about that. And so you have the three different types of ink that I'm presenting to you today: the wet erase, the semi-permanent, and the chalk paint. And then when do you use it on non-porous or porous? And so you'll see there's some red X's, and I'm saying that, say for chalk paint for non-porous, yeah, no, that's right. There's really no practical use for the chalk paint to go on a non-purpose surface. The chalk paint on glass isn't really going to stick very well. And if you try to do it on vinyl, well, there's just better tools for that. And then if you look over at the wet erase and the semi-permanent, again, you can put them on porous. It would be fine, but you're kind of you'll mess up your marker nibs if you're writing on something porous. It's just going to eat away at it. And again, that chalk paint is really great for that use. So where do we really want to use these? Well, when it comes to non-porous, so that's your glass and vinyl. So this is great for indoor. The wet erase is great for indoor or crafts or practicing. So if you're getting ready to practice with this and chalk markers are a little bit different than even regular markers or other calligraphy tools. You have to shake them, you have to pump them. Practice is you really want to use that wet erase. And then the semi-permanent, this is where it's really specialized. And you're going to want to use this. It can be used indoor for crafts that might get wet for some reason, or you don't want the ink to come off. But it's really great for those sidewalk signs and outside of windows, because again, if it rains or snows, it's not going to drip everywhere. So that's a really specialty product. And then again, with that chalk paint, it works great on porous, again, whether it's sidewalks, walls, bridges, if you're outside somewhere, rocks, and as you saw, snow. And I would love to challenge somebody to write in snow. It's actually pretty fun, and I don't know anybody else that's done it, so I think it'd be fun to see your work as well. So any questions here in terms of tool and when to use it? So I'm going to talk a little bit about these brands and the pros and the cons of these brands. So as many of you know, I'm a Neuland ambassador, so of course I'm going to say great things about them. But I say I'm a Neuland ambassador because I really believe in the product. Every product that they've put out, I've tested. Some of them I've even had a hand in designing or being on a testing team. So I really do love this product. And the pros of this product, and I think this is one that none of the other ones can really say, is that they are environmentally friendly. They are refillable and the nibs are replaceable. So some of these markers I have put ink in for years. And that's true of their entire line. Their entire line is like that. So even their water-based markers are refillable. They don't smell, they don't bleed. If there's a lot of ink, of course, they'll bleed, but just if you have the right amount of ink, they won't bleed. And then there's a wide variety of accompanying supplies. So if you're placing an order at Neuland, there's all kinds of other things that you can also order as well. They have a whole line of things. And then I would say that the con really is that it's wet erase only. So really you're only going to use these outside for those special uses. So it's not that much of a con because other products are wet erase only as well. But I will say that there is no U.S. distributor, so you have to order online. And so the shipping can get a little pricey. If any of you are interested in ordering these, I would suggest that maybe you get together with a friend, or the guild might be interested. And we're also talking about maybe coming down to Albuquerque later this fall. So if any of you want me to, if any of you want me to bring some Neuland products, I'd be happy to place an order and get you that, and you won't have to pay for the shipping. So any questions about Neuland brand? I'm going to stop sharing here and just share very quickly their website so that you can see it. And thank you so much, Sharon, for putting the link in the chat. That particular link, the one that says Neuland, it goes right to, and let me see if I can get it up here. It actually goes right to a shopping list that I created for you called Chalk It Up. So the chalk, to me, this was the item that I designed. They have refills, and then all of their markers in two different sizes, the large flat, and then the wedge nib, then the my workboard, and then this is just a thing that you can keep it in to protect it. This little stand is great because you can make signs and it'll stand up. And then, as I said, there are replacement nibs for both sizes. And then I just put the white ones in here so that you can click on that and choose other colors if you want. And then they have this microfiber cloth and I'll show you in a minute when I show you my desktop, but they have a microfiber cloth that is so thick and so soft. I've never seen one of these. And it took them a couple of months to even get it on their website to ship to the United States. So I'm excited that they're here. I don't know how many people get excited about microfiber cloths, but this one's pretty exceptional. Anyway, I wanted to have these up here because these are the kind of products that we use for the chalk supplies, but you can also go onto Neuland's website and into their shop. They've got tons of different kinds of equipment. So if at any time you go on their website and you're wondering, what is this or what I would recommend, feel free to email me directly. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. All right, let's get back to the presentation. And again, let me know if you have any questions. So we talked about VersaChalk being another wet erase brand. It does have a wide variety of accompanying supplies. They have some vinyl types of stickers that you can use. They're like squares, and you can stick them on anything. Lots of different chalkboards. They even carry real slate chalkboards. And I think out of all of the chalk companies, they probably have the widest variety of colors available. But they're not environmentally friendly. As soon as the ink runs out, you got to throw it away. It's wet erase only, and they're pretty inexpensive. You can get them just about anywhere, Amazon, Walmart, wherever. But the quality is okay. I mean, it's a chalkboard marker that's going to get erased. You know, how great does it have to be? But it's not my favorite. And then chalk ink, this is the one that comes in both wet erase and semi-permanent. And they too have a wide variety of accompanying supplies. So you can go to chalkink.com and check out some of the other things that they have. But then again, I say they're not environmentally friendly, but I think that they are working on refills, and they might be working on the nibs. I know that you can take them out and flip them around and put them back in, so their nibs are two-sided. But it's the casing that fills up the landfills. All right, so looks like we have a question in the chat. Remind you what I said about writing on chalkboard painted surfaces. Yes, so when you use chalkboard paint, that black paint that you put down so that you can use on chalk, I would only use actual chalk sticks for that. rather than chalk ink, because it can be hard to remove that. That chalk paint can be very porous. If you haven't sanded down your substrate, a lot of times people will put it on wood, put it right on top. I would only use like actual chalk to write on those, which I think they're wonderful. It's beautiful. But when people say, oh, we can just put some chalk paint down and then write on it, yes, you can with some of these wet erase types, but sometimes it gets in there and then it's really hard to clean out. Great question. So I want to show you a couple of lettering styles and techniques. Many of you know lots of different hands, right? So if you're good at broad edge calligraphy, whether it's Neuland hand or I have this thick, thin style that sort of looks like a brush letter where I'm using the broad edge of the marker and then the a really thin edge, and I'll do a demo in a second, then you can write with chalk markers. So it doesn't just have to be your handwriting. You can actually use whatever hands you do in broad edge, you can do with these chalk markers. And you'll see there in the lower right that I've made a single, double, triple. So because these chalk markers are limited in their size, the largest one being 5 to 15, 15 millimeter being the broadest size, that's wonderful, but you can only go so big with your letter, right? So you might have to double up your stroke or triple up your stroke and draw that out. And I did that in 3 different colors so that you can see the process of it getting bigger and how much bigger it can get if you do it. And those do multiple strokes. All right. And then, of course, when we get to the chalk paint, we've got a couple of different brushes. And these are the recommended brushes that I use. When I first started doing it, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of art supplies and I have some really expensive brushes. And I thought, I don't know if I want to take this gritty paint and draw and write and paint on hard porous surfaces like chalk. I don't know what that's going to do to my beautiful brushes. So these are student grade synthetic brushes that I use. One is a 16, so these are really big because I happen to work really big. And if you're on the sidewalk and someone's standing up, they're at least going to probably be 5 feet away from your actual drawing, so it needs to be bigger. So I use big brushes. So a 16 round and a 3/4 inch broad edge or flat brush. But probably any brush you have will do. It's just that these are the ones that I chose and that I have found to be work consistently well. And if you have any favorite brushes, feel free to put that in the chat. So now I want to do a demo of the chalk ink. I'm going to show you how the markers actually work first, and then I'll do a demo, in glass. Sorry about that. We'll come back to that in just a minute. So this was this is actually on the chalkboard. So Neuland has this, it's called My Workboard. It's pretty small. I want to say it measures to about 11 by 17. And I drew this up and used it to promote to my network and folks to let them know that I'm going to be doing this, this talk. And I'm using this big one here, looks like the side of the broad edge. So this is 5 millimeter, and then the big side is 15 millimeter. And so it looks like I was using this broad side here, just the broad side, but the thin side to write lettering. And then with liquid is actually silver. I don't know if you see, there's a little bit of a sheen to it. So there's two metallic colors that Neuland has. They have silver and they have gold. And then the white is just a chalk marker. And I left it, I made it purposely, I took some of the ink off of the nib so that it would look a little rough looking, sort of like chalk. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you can see. And the surface of the Neuland workboard is really, really smooth. It's almost between non-porous and porous. And I really love this. Now, something you have to know about these markers, I'm going to take another sheet of paper here just to pump it on, but you have to shake them a lot. So if you were early on, if you came in early, you might have seen me shaking these markers. You want to shake them for about 2 minutes, and I shook them for a long time, so I don't have to shake them as long now. And what you also have to do is you have to pump them. Now, these aren't like a regular water-based markers where you can just pop the top off and start going. This takes a little bit of finesse. And so I didn't prime this one, so I might have to choose another color. There we go. And so the ink is actually going to come around the outside. It is going to fill up the nib a little bit. And if you ever find that your markers are clogging, you can just take that nib out. You could probably wash it out if it's not worn too much, or you can just replace it, and that'll help with any types of clogs. And so let's see here. Let's be thinking about Neuland hand. And I know some of you calligraphers are going to say, why is she using 4? Okay, I can use 3.5 nib widths, but as a graphic recorder, I tell my students they can make Neuland hand 4 nib widths high because we're essentially writing with a sponge on the end of a stick. So this isn't like a very precise tool like a beautiful metal broad edge. This can be a little bit, it can go over a little bit because it's got this nylon nib, which is great for working fast. As you can see, sometimes it drips a little bit. That's because I just got done pumping and I pumped a little bit too much. Here's that beautiful microfiber cloth, and I love this. It's so thick. And I've actually got it a little bit damp before I came here, but it's huge. It's probably going to take up this whole area. It's probably 15 by 15 inches. Yeah.
Here
It's
we have
nice
a
and
couple
thick.
questions.
Okay, great.
Michaela's asking, the metallic looks more opaque. Is that due to the way you applied those letters?
Ah, that's a great question, and I'll show that right now.
And
I
the
think,
second question is, how fast does it dry?
yeah, so both great questions. Well, if you're here in the Southwest, we know things dry in like a minute, right? So where there's a little bit of pooling, that'll take a little bit longer, but right in the center there, it's already dry. So it dries pretty quickly. As far as the metallics go, because the metallic is like these are little bitty bits of metallic, probably metal of some type in there, they are going to separate a little bit more. But I think the reason why it looks a little bit more opaque is because of this is because we're on uh, online. Oops, I needed to pump a little bit. It's good because we're on Zoom. You're not really seeing that shimmer that we would see. Plus, I've got the light that's above me isn't daylight. It's a ring light. So I just don't think you're going to get that kind of shimmer that you want. Yeah, it just kind of looks wet here. And I'll do the silver because it might show up a little bit better. I actually like the silver a lot. It does look a little bit more opaque, but it's got some shimmer to it too. And as you can see, compared to the white, it's just glowing, right? So, and here where it's pooled a little bit, you can see on the paper that it's got a little bit of a shimmer. And this gold, I just need to shake it up a little bit more. Like I said, this is like an art supply. This isn't like a marker that's just going to come right out of the box ready to go. Yeah. So this is that 15 millimeter. It's nice and big. And then we can get to the smaller one, which is the wedge nib. So it's got a bit of an angle to it, just like some of our broad edge does. This one's super juicy. So if you know Neuland hand, and I apologize to the calligraphers in the room that might be cringing at my Neuland hand. Remember, I'm a graphic recorder, so I write super fast. For those of you that want to get a sense of how fast that is, I can usually fill up a 4x8 sheet of paper in about 45 minutes, full of notes, drawings, and letters. So I'm writing really, really fast. But this gives you an idea of the sizes that you can do. And then, of course, if you double or triple stroke your letters, you can go much bigger. So that's great for windows and if you're doing any kind of advertising type of things. Yeah. So this green, again, was really juicy. The edges are already starting to dry, but they will This will dry probably in a matter of about 5 minutes, I'd say. And this will scratch, so you can scratch it or wipe it off pretty easily. So again, this works great for inside. If you are wanting to write on glass that's going to show up, say, in a storefront, then just write it on the inside of the glass. And yes, you'll have to draw backwards, but I'm going to show you a trick on that next. All right, any questions so far? Can I go over the previous line without it smearing? That's a great question. So I'm going to do that again with the gold because the gold is actually looking a little bit better now that it's dried. I wouldn't say that it's going to smear. If you do it with another color, then yes, because these are both wet, it will smear. Now, if you use the chalk ink Artista Pro, it won't smear as long as it's dry already. So you can put colors on top of colors on top of colors, but with any wet erase marker, if I try to go over, like I'll go over, just let me put a little inline, I'll go with another color on this white. We'll go with that green since it's already nice and juicy. Let's see what happens. I love to experiment. So it doesn't look like it's, it might be picking up a little bit of the white. And I'm feeling a little bit of a drag there. That's probably because it was starting to pick up on that white a little bit, but I could easily go over it. Oops, not such a straight inline. But as you can see, you can use one color over the other if you're careful. Something that I also like to do is rather than dragging it, because yeah, it could possibly smear, sometimes I just like to use dots on top of another color. So this way, it's kind of hard to see because of this green, it's a little bit fluorescent. But this way you can start to build up a gradient, right? So if you get really dense on your dots down here and do less as you go up, they can look a little bit they can start to space out a little bit. So you can do a little bit of some color on top of the other color, but I wouldn't get too jazzy. I would just try to lay it right on top, either through dots or some very simple inlines. Good, great questions. All right, so let me show you a little bit about working on glass. And so my desktop here, this is just a piece of vinyl, so don't worry, I don't have actual wood there, and it's looks a little messy because I can make a little bit of a mess on my desktop a little bit. So glass is really great. And if you're working, again, if you're working on a big project where maybe you want to do some lettering on a window, what I would suggest is to lay it out on paper first and then put it on the outside of your window. And because it's going to be brighter outside than it is where you're working, you're going to be able to just use that to trace. So your paper is going to go on the outside of the window. You are going to write on the inside, and then you'll take that paper away, and then your lettering will be there for everyone to see. And again, I highly suggest using white because from the outside it'll show up as white, and from the inside it'll show up as black. And so it can be seen from either side. Now, this was a really quick quote that I wrote out using a Neuland brush marker. Let's see if I can locate it here. Probably not the exact one. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is a Neuland #1 art. It's a pretty good size art brush. And so I wrote that, and then I thought, wait a minute, I'm not really working with an art brush. I'm working with a wedge nib. So I took the #1. This is also a #1. They call it the #1 because it's just the size of it. It's their medium size marker. And so this has a wedge nib in it. And when I say wedge nib, what I mean by that is, oops, I'm not a very good Neuland ambassador because I don't keep my marker full of ink. So this is going to have a broad edge. It's going to be at an angle, and I can still use the broad edge and the tip to create a brush lettering look. And so I'm just going to take this, just like I talked about before, I'm going to lay this right on top here, and I'm going to go with a red just because I think it'll look better with a white backdrop. And again, you want to make sure that you're pumping your chalk marker horizontally. So even if you're going to work vertically, say on a window or something, you don't want to pump it against the window because the ink could come out and spill all over the floor or run down your glass. So using that broad edge of my marker and then the very tip of the nib, I can get thins. So remember, thin up, thick down for brush lettering. So I can get those thicks and thins just by flipping the marker. And I learned this technique, and I'm going to leave that Y there until I write the next word under it, and then I'll put the descender. But I thought about this technique when I was learning folded pen from Carol Dubois. I kept thinking, because you flip the pen to work on the tip and the side, and I had a student ask me, how can they make a brush lettering look without having to change their marker? And a lot of people in my field are not comfortable using brush markers. They just like these wedge nibs. And so I thought about it for a while, and I thought, I'm going to take that technique from using a folded pen and use it with a wedge nib. So working on glass is really, really slick. And what's great about it, for those of you that are thinking, okay, why would you want to do this? I got to say, if you don't have a chalkboard to practice on, this is an excellent way to practice. It's nice, it's smooth, and you can easily erase it. So this whole thing can be erased very quickly just with water or a rag. So I'll go back, put my E in, I'll wait for that Y again. And what's great about the non-porous surface, and especially glass because it's really slick, is that I don't have to pump a lot. It's not pulling a lot of the ink out. I'm starting to feel a little bit of drag, just a little bit, but not a lot. And I don't think I can really get my serif or my flourish in there, so I'm going to wait. So am I still on the page? There we go. Yep. So now I can take this away. I can put whatever color I want in my background. As I was drawing that, I was thinking, what would look really good is a picture of clouds and maybe put a frame on top of it. So when you're finished, I mean, this could even be something that you do for someone, and then you can frame it. And a lot of fun things to do, especially if you have it coming off the wall a little bit. Look at that wonderful drop shadow. And so I've done some pieces that was in art shows where I've written on glass, and the focal point was really the shadow rather than the lettering that was on the actual glass. Great. All right, so it looks like we got a great question in the chat. Any tips on writing backwards? Yeah, get really good at writing backwards. I don't mean to be a smarty pants about it, but I have to say that I think it was in the photo in the intro and also on the page where it shows that I'm writing on glass. So what I did is right as soon as the pandemic hit, we have a really large sliding glass window and we live right next to a hospital. And I knew that the nurses and the doctors were driving in every day. And so I wrote a big thank you to our frontline workers on the glass. And I had the same question because I wasn't using the semi-permanent. All I had were the Neuland markers, the wet erase markers, and I needed to draw it inside. And so what I did there is I drew out the whole thing on the outside, and then I went inside and I redrew it with these markers, and then I went outside and I erased it. And so it was a little strange when we're used to writing in certain ways, you had to kind of look at the letter less of a letter form because you get it twisted in your head and more like a drawing. If any of you have ever read the book Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain, where we're really drawing marks rather than giving it names of what it is, like trying not to be representational, then that really, really helps. Yeah. Great question, Mikhail. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to just give you a few more tips. And this is when, and for those of you that follow me on Instagram, you'll see me, I make a lot of samples of my tools that I'm about to use. And what I mean by that is you can see there on the left, I got a bunch of markers and I wrote down all the colors that I had on black paper because I wanted to know what those colors look like on the black. And I just didn't want to mess up my board because it was nice and clean. And I thought, I'll just write it on a black piece of paper and then that's my color palette. So for me, it's really important for me to make a color palette. Even if I already have a copy of this, I'll make another one because that's going to tell me what condition my nibs are in and how much ink is in my marker. And so I write those out. And also it's a great way to get warmed up. Another way to get warmed up, and so on the right here, you'll see this is VersaChalk. These were all the colors that I had in VersaChalk, and they had just sent me the sidewalk chalkboard, and I had a really hard time because I'd never worked in that format. I'd never worked 2 feet wide by 3 feet tall before. And so I thought, well, how many letters can I get across? And how big do I need to write? And so at that time, I was writing like an architect, sort of this loose style of an architect. And I took each one of the colors and I wrote out A through Z because I wanted to see how big that needed to be if I needed to write all the way across. And doing that has always helped me understand how big the tool is in relationship to the size that I'm working on. So if you're ever working in a sketchbook versus a wall piece, you kind of need to know how your tool is going to act in all of that negative space. And so my 2 big tips are really make make your color palette and also practice. And again, it's a great way to warm up, but practice writing the sizes that you need before you actually have to create your piece. I think I restarted this one on the right. I wrote it probably 2 or 3 times before I got it right. And if you'll notice, there's really thin white lines there. I was actually using a Fons and Porter white mechanical pencil to get those lines in. Now, we all know that those can wipe off with water, so the lines just have to stay if you're using wet erase. But if you're using that semi-permanent, you can use Fons and Porter pencils to draw things out, use the semi-permanent, and then just wash it off with water. And so this is some shots from when I did all of those sidewalk chalkboards for Mancus for their Christmas event. And you'll see I was using, I actually got a deal for the town that I think everybody bought these sidewalk chalkboards. And so what I had on hand is that circle template. That's something that I designed for Neuland. It's a set of circles. And so if you need to draw a perfect circle on the fly, that chalk pencil is that Fons and Porter. I did use the chalk ink markers for this project. And in the lower right here, if you see where it says Mancus Creative District, this on the right there, I drew one on a teeny tiny chalkboard because I kind of wanted to make this is their logo, and I wanted to make it repeatable. So I drew it first. And then I thought, this is going to be interesting. How can I make that over and over again so that on each chalkboard it looks the same? So I made this stencil out of a piece of cardstock, and you'll see that it's kind of tilted, so I had to cut the corners so that I could just slide it right in. It would be in the same place on the same chalkboard every single time. And I actually wrote Mancus Creative District in pencil, and then I took my X-Acto knife and I cut out all the spaces where those letters were going to be, so that when I went to go write that with the chalk pencil, it was really easy for me to just kind of chicken scratch it, write it really fast. And then I would take that away, and then I would add, their logos were orange and white and black. So this was perfect. I just used orange and white to create that. It's made to look like the Creative District are the bristles of the brush, and the orange is the handle, and then the Mancus is the like the paint on the brush. So that was my little setup. I had a 4x8 table, and I had all of my supplies on this one table. You'll also see that I had this wooden slat across. I kind of treated that sort of, that was my way of being able to lean on the chalkboard without smearing it. If for some reason there was a part of it that was already drying, I could still work on the rest of it. Yeah. So here's some more examples of some of the chalkboards. Some of the chalkboards, people would just bring their chalkboard to me. So this one was just a one-sided one. And I would have a really quick conversation with them. What do you want on your chalkboard? You know, what are your, do you have any colors, any brand colors kind of thing? And they were all pretty open to it. But I did have to do a different layout for each business. And there were 14 businesses altogether. I thought because I'm a graphic recorder and I could fill up 4 by 8 feet in 45 minutes, I thought, oh, no problem. I'll have this done in a couple hours. It took me 2.5 days. So budgeting your time, whatever you think it is going to be, consider 3.5 times more. That's probably what it'll take. And so here are some resources. On this picture here, you'll see this is when VersaChalk first sent me the chalkboard, and they wanted me to write an article about creating sidewalk chalkboards. And so this was a little bit later, I think later in the year. I think it was January or February. No, it was March 15th through the 17th. Mankus came back to me and said, can you make a chalkboard for the upcoming event, Mankus Melt? And so again, I used a small chalkboard to kind of lay it out, get my colors, figure out what the layout's going to be, and then I used that same layout for the big one. And so then I wrote a blog for VersaChalk. It's that second bullet there, how to create stunning A-frame chalkboard signs like a boss. And I talk about the steps of making sure that the front side and the back side kind of match, and how do you go about doing that. Yep. And then, of course, Neuland has a variety of blog posts about their chalk markers. So that's going to take you to just the chalk ones, but they've got a ton of different posts about other things as well. And then for those of you that might be interested in my book, what I teach is it's large scale lettering styles that are based on styles that I found that inspired me on a cross country trip that I took. And so it's called Lettering Journey, but it's really more for visual practitioners. But I think you might enjoy it because I go through step by step every single letter. They have a ductus and they're written at the actual size. So if you like to make big letters, it's hard to look at a book where the letters are really small and try to translate that in your head. So all of the letters are written with a gray marker so you can see where the strokes overlap, and you'll see the ductus and all of that. Thanks for sharing the links in the chat, Sharon. And so we're going to have a chalk ink giveaway, and I'm going to be giving away 4 pieces of Neuland tools: the actual workboard that I talked about, the large marker, the smaller wedge nib marker, and a bottle of refill ink. And these are all going to be in white. So if you want other colors, you'll have to get those yourself. But these are all in white, so you can either refill your markers, or if you want to use a brush, you can use this refill ink and just put it in a small container and do the brush. And then this is the actual chalkboard, the My Work board. So we're going to give this away. It's about $50, $60 worth of materials, and we'll give this away, I think, at the end of our business meeting. And so I just want to thank everyone. If you want to follow me, actually, it's funny, I made this presentation just the other day. I changed I actually added a new Instagram page. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, it can either be Corp Graffiti Art, that's sort of my personal one now, or Let's Letter Together with underscores in the spaces. And my website is letslettertogether.com, and there's 2 sections. I have a section for visual practitioners and a section for calligraphers. So feel free to check that out. And if you get stuck, if you have any questions and you're using chalk ink or making your own chalk paint and you get stuck, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to help you out. All right. Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Heather, thank you so very much for doing this.